Hey there, truth seekers. I'm Larry Litton, your guide through the maze of modern politics and power dynamics on liberty, leadership, and lies. Each episode will challenge the narratives, expose the lies, and celebrate the leaders who champion true liberty. Get ready to question, learn, and maybe even change your mind. So let's dive into the truth together. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to be talking to Dr. Carol Lieberman in this week's episode. Dr. Lieberman is a board-certified forensic psychiatrist, a three-time Emmy-honored TV personality, and a best-selling author. She is known as America's Psychiatrist. She provides fearless, no-nonsense psychological insights into crime, politics, media hysteria, and other cultural trends. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing the category of mental illness running rampant, and mostly on the left side of the political spectrum, the mental illness condition most commonly referred to as Trump derangement syndrome. Dr. Lieberman will break down the stages of this, for lack of a better word, disease in our talk today, and we will also discuss or compare and contrast it with the communist reactions to previously elected Republican presidents. For some background, for those that are not familiar with Trump derangement syndrome, or TDS, is a term used to describe an intense, often irrational hostility toward President Donald Trump. It typically refers to critics who exhibit extreme emotional reactions, obsessive focus, or hyperbolic condemnation of Trump, his actions, or his supporters. Sometimes, really all the time, to the point of distorting reality or overlooking contradictory evidence. The concept mirrors similar derangement syndrome labels applied to critics of other political figures like Reagan or Bush, and it reflects polarized political discourse where the commies on the left accuse conservatives and Republicans, two differences there, of irrational bias. Now, while there isn't currently, and that is until Dr. Lieberman's work is recognized by the medical community, we won't hold our breath, there isn't currently a formal psychological diagnosis that exists for Trump derangement syndrome and is currently only used as a term rooted in political rhetoric. Listen to the episode to discover the way forward. So let's take a stand in the arena with Dr. Lieberman this week, folks, and get on with the show. Welcome to Liberty, Leadership, and Lies, the podcast where we unravel the complex web of politics, power, and deception. Each week, we dive into the stories behind the headlines, exploring how liberty is eroded and the selfishness of our political leaders, as well as the lies that shape our world. Join us as we dissect the truth from fiction by examining the tactics used by the new aristocracy, the political class, at the local, state, and national levels of government as we dare to challenge the status quo. Get ready for thought-provoking discussions, exclusive interviews, and a journey into the heart of what really drives our society. Liberty, Leadership, and Lies, where your understanding of the world begins to change. Tune in every Monday morning and prepare to see beyond the veil. All right, ladies and gentlemen, well, welcome to the audience today, or to the show today, Dr. Carol Lieberman. She's also known as America's Psychiatrist, and she's got a lot of great thoughts out there that I'd like her to share with the audience. But first, Doctor, why don't you give you a brief introduction of yourself to the audience, please?
Okay, I am a psychiatrist. I also have a master's in public health. I do a lot of different things. Of course, I treat patients. I'm also an expert witness for criminal and civil cases. I write books. My most recent, and the one that I'm the proudest of, is Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. And the first half of the book is for grown-ups, how to talk to kids about terrorism and so on. And the second half is a children's book, children's pictures and so on. But it really tells, it's a serious why terrorists want to kill us. And, it goes 9/11, the underwear bomber, everything, the highlights of terrorism.
Wow.
And And then, of course, I do television and radio, and I host my own podcasts, the Terrorist Therapist Show, and also Dr. Carol's Couch. And and I've written books. I've as I said, what else? The website I would want people to go to most after they hear this
Mhm.
is um is terroristtherapist.com, because there's a lot of things on there, but particularly there are music videos that I created to remember 9/11, and I also created one for October 7th, and uh the originally it was for the 9/11 to be played. I had them played on the billboards, mobile billboards, going around New York and going around Washington, D.C. And then of course this year I also did October 7th, and I had that going around Los Angeles. So, at first, the 9/11 videos were just about, why we need to remember 9/11 and all the different things about 9/11. They were sort of warm and fuzzy. But this past year, I updated it. I made it a warning that people need to realize that there are terrorists in America now, and that we are, more vulnerable to terror attacks now than we were on 9/11. So it's not just, of course, about remembering the people who died and so on, but it's also about waking up. Americans are so asleep as far as what is to come, or what is here.
Absolutely. And I'll hang that website for the audience. I'll hang the website in the description of the video and the audio podcast, terroristtherapist.com. What's interesting, and one of the topics that we'd like to talk about today is something that you've spoken about before, and it's the Trump derangement syndrome.
Yes.
Let's give us a little bit of insight about that.
Well, Trump derangement syndrome has been around since he first ran for president. But it has exploded. It was nothing like what it is now. Um, Back then, people weren't as violent as they are now. So I define Trump derangement syndrome as an irrational, quasi-psychotic hatred of anything Trump, resulting in rage and over-the-top efforts to destroy him and his work. So, of course, this kind of, um, anything Trump, so that you can understand why there's all this destruction of Teslas, for example.
Right, because he's associated with Elon Musk,
Right.
and that's just amazing to me. The people that preach peace, love, tolerance. They'll have the coexist bumper stickers all over their cars. Yet they do not want to have anything to do with trying. Just the mere mention of his name
Yes.
seems to send them into a psychotic rage. But let me ask you this: is it unique to Trump, or have we seen episodes like this in the past with
Well,
other
I
personalities?
well, I think what's happening to Trump is unique in the intensity of it.
Right.
There have been other people we have hated. I mean, for example, supposedly there was a derangement syndrome for Bush, but I never heard about it. It wasn't as widespread as the Trump derangement syndrome. Uh, so, I mean, then there are some celebrities who we hate, but that's different. There is Now it's gotten way out of control. And there, I defined it, I divided it, described it as in three different types. The mild cases, the moderate cases, and the major cases.
Mhm.
And um the mild cases are people who like yell at the television set when Trump comes on. They or also they uh may speak on TikTok. Maybe they do rants on TikTok. um then the moderate, and I have other descriptions of what defines a minor case. And an example of a minor case, although I think I'm being overly generous in this, is the ladies of The View. Especially Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar. Now, moderate cases have, in addition to the mild symptoms, one's life has been overtaken by Trump derangement syndrome, interfering with work and family and other relationships and responsibilities. And the description also includes threatening, following, or assaulting people who wear MAGA hats or other MAGA clothing or carry MAGA collectibles, committing road rage upon seeing a Trump bumper sticker on a vehicle, things like that. And examples of moderate are, well, I'm sure you probably heard of this. A woman, it was recently, a woman on the subway in New York. She saw a young man with a MAGA hat. You saw it, and
Yeah.
she calling him racist and all that. And it was hard to tell exactly what ethnic background he was, but he was not white. And so he kept saying, how could I be racist?
Right.
But
Well,
she
in their terminology, he's then white adjacent.
Yes, right. So after she was yelling at him and so on, she then, when the train stopped, she chased him outside onto the platform and she ran after him to try to grab the hat, and she ended up falling on her face.
Mm.
So that's what you get for. So major cases, in addition to having mild and moderate symptoms, um, include quitting one's job or leaving one's family to work full time to try to stop Trump, leaving the US in protest of Trump and establishing residence in another country, doing something illegal to try to stop Trump, such as bribe a judge to stop one of his executive orders, threatening a major figure in Trump's administration up close and personal, attacking someone's personal Tesla, a Tesla showroom, or a manufacturing facility, doxing Trump supporters and making swatting calls, and then fantasizing about harming Trump oneself, or joining a nefarious group plotting harm to Trump, or arranging for someone else to harm Trump, even though you know that the punishment would be severe. And some examples of major cases are Rosie O'Donnell and Ellen DeGeneres, who have moved, Rosie to Ireland and Ellen DeGeneres to England. And then the New York Attorney General, Letitia James. And well, all these wave of swatting attacks and so on, which really should be considered domestic terrorism. And then there are some symptoms besides like a general descriptions of these three types. There
Mm.
are symptoms that can be associated with it, like anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, hysteria, paranoia, sociopathy, psychopathy, suicidal thoughts, delusions, loss of touch with reality, mass psychosis, anger, irritability, or rage. So,
That's everything you see on the television today.
that's right. I think a lot of the hosts on certain channels can fit into these categories.
Absolutely. I do remember the quote unquote Bush derangement, but
Oh,
the
right.
difference between that was the Bush presidency, George W., they never attacked back. And in fact, most Republicans would never fight back. That's what makes Donald Trump different. Is because he'll take it and then he'll dish it back out, and it
Yeah.
just escalates them.
Yes, yes. That's a good point. I mean, I know there were during Bush, there were people who didn't like him. Some people would say that they turn off the radio when he comes on and so on, but it's not like at the
Oh
level that,
yeah, again, I think I attribute that to because Trump pushes back. I can remember the many George Bush effigies being burned all over the country whenever he did or said something, but then he wouldn't either back up what he did with more, rhetoric, or nobody on the right side of the political spectrum would ever engage in any kind of combative dialogue. So it would flare up and then just die out. With Trump, since he pushes back, he's got their button, he
uh,
pushes back, and it just ramps him up from 60 cycle energy to 400 cycle energy.
yes, yes, that's a good point.
Mhm. So, in your professional opinion, though, has Trump derangement syndrome has it really affected the discourse in our country that bad, or especially for conservatives that are trying to engage in good faith debates.
Well, I mean, you know, in debates, like a formal debate,
Hmm.
um, there's sort of some safety there, in the sense that nothing's going to get too out of control, one would hope, in any case, or there would be security or something. But where it really is affecting people is in the workplaces, in the just the restaurants, any place that people, just average people, congregate.
Hmm.
And if someone happens to say something that touches it off, like well, I mean, now of course they're complaining about the tariffs, but
Hmm.
um, you know, it's just it's just and people who are friends and family of people who like during the campaign, friends and family of people who were voting for Trump have stopped talking to them. And
Hmm.
this hasn't really gotten better. I thought originally that when the during that after the campaigns, like after he was elected,
Hmm.
and we started to see some of the things that he was doing to make America great again, that everybody would be happy and they wouldn't, they'd stop being against him, because surely he's helping things in your life. I mean, even just the border,
Hmm.
getting rid of criminals who kill people. So so I thought that it would gradually die away, but I think it's getting stronger instead of dying away.
I do honestly believe it as well because I mean there's so much net positive from the policy. I mean, they can't separate the policy from the man.
Right,
And that's where the discourse has gone because no matter what good faith work or good results come from the policies, it's because there's a his name attached to it. They have to oppose it. Even if it's
right,
good for America, if it's good for themselves even,
right,
they're
right.
going to oppose it because his name's attached to it. And I don't see uh an off ramp to that type of behavior. Do you? For the ones for that are in the clinical phase, the worst phase is I don't see them taking an off ramp.
I know. Well, what I recommended for treatment, because the DSM, not only does it give mental health professionals a common platform, to talk about these things, but it's also for insurance companies. And so the idea would be that people with it, if they were willing to get treatment, would be able to get the treatment paid for by insurance companies. But that's a big if they were willing to get treatment for it. I mean, they think the people who like Trump need treatment. They they
Oh,
call it
re-education.
Trump devotion syndrome.
Oh.
That we're crazy. So, so I've recommended individual psychotherapy. I mean, first logical reasoning for mild, very mild cases, talking about things that benefited them, finding things that Trump did that particularly benefited them.
Mm.
And then individual psychotherapy for all minor, moderate, and major. But the therapy wouldn't be directed at the policies or even at Trump himself. Um, it would be directed at things that are wrong with the person that make them hate him. So, like, for example, a lot of men um, hate him because they are intimidated by him. They see him as being a more of a man.
Mm.
Obama did he was talking at the Democratic National Convention. And let me see, I have him in here. I have him as a moderate. Yes, here. He was talking, he said, Trump has a quote, weird obsession with crowd sizes. And as he was saying this, he was going like this, like it's about how manly one is. And so it would focus on, for example, giving these men greater self-esteem. Then also for people where the TDS affects their family, their partner or the whole family, And then there could be couples therapy and family therapy. And then for the moderate and major cases, in addition to the therapy, then medication to aim at the symptoms, like the paranoia or the anxiety or something like that.
Right. Yeah, what was that movement that came out right around December, January, of the women that said no more sex or no more relations with anybody that
Right.
supports Trump, or there was even the one
That's right.
that wanted to poison their husbands if they had
Yes,
voted.
yes.
That's a symptom of a much deeper issue. If they really want to kill their husband for their vote,
Yes. Um, yes, yes. Didn't include that yet. This is why I have to include that. Absolutely. That's a great example. Yes, that happened right around the election day, if I can
right?
remember.
Yeah, I did a couple of episodes on it and showed some examples of some videos that these ladies were actually like referring to. It was a phenomenon back that started out in Italy, close to the Renaissance period, where these wives were starting to poison their husband.
Yes, Lizzie Estrada, is that what you're thinking of? Well, that Lizzie Estrada, at least I don't know, I don't remember if they poisoned them, but they wouldn't have sex with them.
Uh,
Yeah, I remember this.
and they're bringing that up as some kind of code word. Hey, yeah, this is what we're going to start doing. And I'm like, your level of TDS is has reached a point where I don't think there's a safe off ramp other than institutionalizing you permanently.
Well, yes, this is well, talked about I go back to the pussy hats. Remember when the pussy hat
Yeah.
marches and so on?
The Women's
Uh,
March right after his first inauguration.
yes, exactly. After because they think that he hates women and they, keep wanting to remind us of his having supposedly said
Some
that
locker room talk with Billy
yes,
Bush.
exactly, exactly. And so yes, but that's right. I'm glad you reminded me of that. See, I'm still putting it together. I have most of it, but that's why I haven't submitted it yet because I'm putting the finishing touches on.
Oh, okay. So this is a work in progress that you for fellow clinicians to treat these people, or
Well, yes, I mean, if it were in the DSM, then all the psychiatrists would know about it.
right?
Not all of them would would want to acknowledge it or would want to find or would say that they have found patients who have this syndrome, because they're in denial. But yes, it would be possible for them to know how to treat them.
I think
Yes.
if you took the Trump out of the Trump derangement syndrome title and
Yeah.
put personality derangement syndrome, that it might get support from the medical community. We can't have Trump's name in a DSM.
Well, yes, I know that. That's true. Um, or like celebrity
Mhm.
uh derangement syndrome or something like that. Um, I
Yeah,
mean,
celebrity did it. Yeah, because he started off as the apprentice, right?
yes. Well, also, I mean, they do this not just to politicians, but like there are some celebrities they decide to hate.
Right.
Um,
So what lasting mental health impacts do you think it's going to have on both the left and the right?
well, it's going to be harder. Future elections are going to be harder. Of course, we're not going to have future elections
Mhm.
because
Okay,
Trump is going to remain in power forever.
right.
A third term and a fourth term um but I mean it's setting a bad precedent. I mean, at least on the positive side,
Mhm.
at least this election was too big to fix. Was that the
Too big to rig.
too big to rig? That's it. Big to rig. Which is already an improvement,
Mhm.
from the last election. But it does and I don't know who the Democrats are going to come up with to run in the next uh presidential election. but because there's nobody who, I mean, I know Gavin Newsom thinks he's going to be the one, but
Right.
man, as a I'm a New Yorker, but like as a transplant to California, I can warn people that you do not want Newsom to make destroy America like he has destroyed California.
Right. He started off on this, I mean, immediately. It's been just a month now. He started off with this trying to put this patina of moderation on him by having this podcast with only conservative voices coming on it.
Yes, yes. Kind of ridiculous. I mean, that's how you win. You have a podcast. And he's tried to change some things, or he's claiming that he's going to change some things, in the schools in California. I mean, it's really bad here about, I mean, there are a lot of things that are really bad, but particularly in the schools, they have such things as if a child tells a teacher that his parent isn't affirming the sex that he decides that he is,
Mm,
then they can take the child away from the parents.
yeah,
I
that's
mean, it's crazy.
this, and that's already happened. I think in Washington State, it's already a policy in Oregon. I saw uh, Matt Walsh had something on about some parents with a child that was on the spectrum hanging or decided to tell the a former teacher about it, and this former teacher and her partner
Huh.
are keeping this child in their house, and the police wouldn't even do anything about it. It's kidnapping. It's a minor,
Oh, wow.
but they won't do anything about it because it's gender affirming care. I have my whole thought process on that. That's not gender affirming. That's continuing a lie. I don't think anybody should be forced to live in somebody else's fantasy world, and that's
Yeah,
what a lot of government institutions are starting to do is making you participate in their mental illness.
right, right. It's child abuse.
Mm,
And it really, the sooner it stops, the better. I mean, Trump is trying to stop it in hospitals and clinics that get federal funding.
mm,
So there is going to be this strata of kids sort of caught in the middle, but and they're going to need extra therapy and so on to decide which whether they should go back or forward.
you're right.
It certainly is going to be a godsend for the children behind them, the children who would have gotten into this program. And it's so absurd because the doctors, the mental health professionals and doctors, other doctors who make the decision on whether the child should go forward with hormones or surgery or whatever. They interview the child for like sometimes I've heard even a half an hour, but like usually, let's say an hour. You can't determine whether a child has a sexual dysfunction, gender dysfunction disorder in a half an hour. I mean, for most of the kids, they're upset. I mean, they're not, they're having problems, psychological problems, but it's due to things in their life, like their parents getting divorced, or
Mm,
like their best friend breaking up with them, or their boyfriend breaking up with them, or something like that. The boyfriend breaks up with them. Oh, well, I better not be a girl anymore. I think it would be better if I was the boy, and then I got to break up with.
right. I mean, it's stuff that people my age and older we went through as children, but we didn't decide to go castrate ourselves or
Right.
stuff like that because I think common sense was very, very prevalent back in the day. I'll use back in the day.
Yes, 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 exactly. It's really just common sense. Trump is bringing common sense back. And
Absolutely.
um, and it's very sad because, like, you talk about the American Psychiatric Association. I went to their website just recently because I was looking to see, what the best way would be to promote this or or present it, or, try to get it going through their decision makers. Um, and the website has totally changed. It is all so woke. It's all DEI this. There are committees to make sure that everything is DEI, and I mean, it's just, it's like, and the horrible thing is, that you kind of would want to count on psychiatrists or regular MDs. The AMA is horrendous as well. They have become so woke. And so when you kind of have these people who you count on to have the common sense, or to have more than common sense, to know, to understand the problems that these things cause and so on. And when you have these, when you've sort of hijacked the mental health professionals and the regular doctors, who do you go to for help?
Right.
I mean, not with TDS, but I'm just saying in general. Like I had a mother the other day tell me, she was talking about how she's taking her child out of school, doing homeschooling because of how the schools are. And she said, and I even have to do a lot of research to pick a psychologist or psychiatrist because they might well be woke, and I don't want my child being influenced by that.
Absolutely. And that was a topic of a previous episode that I talked about, but it's the money behind all of that that really drives it. People may not even be ideologically bound to transgenderism or wokeness, but they are definitely financially bound because there's money to be made. I mean, for
Yes.
instance, with the transgenderism, it's a lifelong patient.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think all of these doctors should lose their license,
Hmm.
because yes, it is totally greed
Mm.
that for most of them, it's not the ideas, ideology, as you were saying, it's
Right.
the money, show me the money.
Which is in every aspect, and you know who's paying for all that? It's the taxpayers of America. We're finding that out with the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse that Elon's
Yes.
discovering. But let's get for back to the TDS for conservative listeners, which is like 99.9% of my show,
Mhm.
who encounters Trump derangement system syndrome in their daily lives at
Right.
work or with their family. What practical advice can you offer those people to handle these interactions without losing their cool?
Well, it's hard when the person is your husband or your wife. Like it's hard to get away from them, cousins and so on. Not that that's ideal to just never see your cousin again, but and if they don't want to go to a psychiatrist for TDS, I mean, to get the person to go to a psychiatrist for TDS, um, it's very hard. I mean, the main thing would be to try to not discuss things that are going to lead into, or like if you're watching the news and Trump comes on, turn it off. Or, it's avoidance, and that's not the ideal way of handling it. But a regular person isn't going to be able to sort of talk about the man's self-esteem or something like that. That gets too complicated.
Right.
But and too much, that also the TDS person is not going to want to hear it from their spouse or from their friend, or so who are you talking, who do you say doesn't have as much self-esteem? So um so it's kind of like trying to avoid the topics. I mean, I was suggesting when it was the holidays that people having people over for Thanksgiving, or the Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's holidays, um, put a glass on the table and have a rule that you are not to talk politics. And anybody who talks politics, starts to talk politics, has to put $1 or whatever, a quarter, something in the glass, and the money goes to charity.
Mm. Definitely not to a Tesla charity, though. So this work that you're working on, is there anything that you would like the audience to know, or would you like them to take some action on it?
On what? I'm sorry.
The work that you're
The work that I'm doing.
yes.
Well, yes, there needs to be an action. I'm going to put out some kind of quiz, or some kind of, I don't know, quiz, but like um a test, how, for if you can rate yourself or rate somebody else, at least that will get more people kind of realizing which category they fit into, or even if they fit into it at all.
Mm,
At least getting people talking about it
mm,
is the start.
okay.
So I guess I would like people to take action. I heard this crazy psychiatrist on, on this show, No, but talking about it with friends and family and realizing, how this is not bringing America in the right direction.
Absolutely isn't. And I mean, it's got to the point where for the last few decades, we've gone away from, or we made it a bad thing. You're not supposed to talk religion or politics at the table, but that's how our country was founded, talking religion and politics at the table. But we've made it a bad thing, and now it's escalated to the point where if you have that, it's going to end up with some purple-haired meanies keying your car, catching it on fire now. So,
Well, that's true. That is unfortunate. I mean, we were once upon a time able to talk about these things in a more civilized manner.
mhm, absolutely. Well, doctor, it's been a pleasure. I understand you have other things and more important
Or
to talk to than my
not
little
more
podcast
important. Not
here.
more important.
Yeah, oh, you have other commitments that you've already
There
had.
we go.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we really appreciate you joining the podcast today. And like I told the audience, I'll hang that link to your website in the comments here, and I encourage everybody to go check her out and see what she has to say about Trump derangement syndrome.
Well, thank
Dr.
you.
Lieberman, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
All right. Well, hey, appreciate you coming on the show. If you got any more to come out, just have your people reach out to me. We'll be glad to have you back on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
All right.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
Well, folks, that will do it for this week. I hope you gained some insight into this form of mental illness that has been sweeping through the left for more than a decade now. I think it is particularly funny and quite emblematic of the party that has been saying for years now that nobody is above the law. Well, they're saying that, and President Trump's Justice Department is arresting judges that are breaking the law, and they're really losing their minds over that. If you're wondering, and I don't mean the hardcore America First people that regularly listen to this program, I'm directing this to those middle of the road quasi Republicans and everybody on the left. If you are wondering if this is what I voted for, I can answer with an emphatic yes. Purging the Defense Department of insubordinate officers, rooting out DEI from government departments as well as institutions of higher learning, getting rid of the money laundering systems of the federal government that is funded with your tax dollars. Yes, yes, and a million times yes. That's what I voted for. This week's wisdom from God's Word comes to us from the book of Exodus, chapter 20, verse 6, a part of the moral law. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. False witness, or lies, are the tools that underlie or serve as the cornerstone for the way our government has been robbing us of our liberty for generations now. We will be discussing that some more in the next few episodes when I have a very special guest on the program. Mr. C. Richard Archie of the Tennessee Firearms Association will be on the show to discuss the failure of the so-called Republican supermajority in our Tennessee General Assembly to honor their oaths over the course of these next few episodes. I hope you join me next week and then over the course of the next few weeks, especially given that the first half of the General Assembly has adjourned and we consider those individuals in elected office here in Tennessee that have slapped the label of Republican on themselves, yet they've governed like communists. For the residents of Sevier County that did or did not vote in last year's Republican primary, the I told you so's are becoming too numerous to count, which is something I will be covering over the course of this summer. As always, please smash that like button, as many other podcasters like to say, but don't forget to share the content with your family, friends, neighbors, and coworkers. Until next week, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a stand in the arena together. Reveille, it's time to wake up.